So here we are, Mark, the sports agents on the road, because a couple of weeks ago you took me up to Sale Sharks, your neck of the woods, and we immersed ourselves there. So I thought I'd bring you somewhere to get a little taste, a real immersive taste of what it is like to be in a racing yard, because I was going on and on about this, wasn't I, the first time I came up to Kingsclere's Park Farm Stables, which is where Andrew Balding trains the horses. So, welcome.
Thank you. So here we are. It's picturesque Hampshire, isn't it? When we were at Sale, I could show you where Stockport trained. Where we're standing now, this is Watership Down.
This is probably where the Queen stood watching her horses, because they've been trained here, the royal horses, for generations.
Very, very similar. So over the course of this episode of The Sports Agent on the road, we will talk to Andrew himself and Annalisa, his wife, who runs not only the stable side of things, but also this is a home for 83, I think it is,
and also the other staff.
Riders.
And I mean, we'll see how the transport works. We'll meet jockeys. We'll see exactly how an operation like this sends out horses every single day to races during the season. It's a fascinating look inside one of the biggest and probably best yards in the country.
Bright eyes. Welcome to The Sports Agent.
So that view, that incredible Watership Down view, and that gallop up there, a bit windy. So we've come back down to Parkhouse Stables, and we're in the colour room now inside for a moment, just to kind of set what we're going to do today and who we're going to speak to.
Yeah, so Andrew Balding, the trainer who owns this place, will join us in a little while. One of the jockeys, Rob Hornby,
who started his life here, has won Group 1 race for them as well. So they will join us in here, as will Hollie Doyle. Yeah, Hollie Doyle is a bit of a bonus for us today, actually, because we didn't know she was going to be riding out today. Leanne White, who is the young rider trainer here, because most of the riders that you'll see out on the gallops today are not professional jockeys yet. They're learning and training, and they go out every day, sometimes 3 to 4 times a day, on these horses to train them, but they don't get the buzz of then going off to Newmarket or Nottingham later in the day to race. That's the goal for quite a lot of them, but some of them, they will end up being trainer jockeys as opposed to racing out at those meets, or they'll find another career in the industry. As we'll see, there are so many other jobs here that go on.
And they will all join us in here in this beautiful room that's just full of jockey silks and horse blankets.
This used to be the chapel here.
Yeah. Mill Reef was operated on in this room.
And all these silks are working silks. The first time I came in here, I assumed it was some kind of, object d'art that was kind of adorning the walls. But it's actually, look at me, I'm a French again. But they're actually the working silks of those owners, and they get taken off to the races and brought back in here. As you say, the blankets that are all around from winning the huge races adorn the ceiling and adorn the walls. So Annalisa, we're here, it's just after 7 o'clock, and this area here, is this a warm-up ring?
Yeah, so we're just on our first lot now, and we've got about 40 horses out this morning. All the riders have turned up on time, which is fantastic. And we're out here now, and Andrew's just having a look at them all, making sure that they're trotting as normally as possible. They've all been checked over by the head lad, so we know that they're all healthy. And Andrew, in his head, has got a little plan for them all. They're just going to trot a mile, and then they'll slow down, and Andrew will talk to each jockey specifically and tell them what he wants them to do this morning.
What's he looking for as he watches them go around?
He's making sure that they move the same as how they moved yesterday, because they all move differently, but they all have a right and a wrong, and you've got to try and make sure that you're not putting these horses under any pressure unless they're perfect.
And Andrew uses his eyes, he uses his intuition. Does he use any kind of technology, any data?
At this stage of the morning, it's all eyes and ears, and he's listening to the head lads, making sure that they ate up overnight, making sure that they've got a normal temperature, making sure they drank water. But later on, when they're actually working, we have heart monitors on the horses' girths.
Okay.
And it'll just be that 5 or 6 horses that we need to answer a few questions: how fit they are, stride length, recovery, heart rate, those sort of things, which just help Andrew know where, sort of paint a picture where they are in their sort of training regime.
Like any, as you say, any industry, any area with young people, you know, the worries about mental health. And the last time I came down here, just that day, one of your jockeys had lost a friend to suicide overnight, that night. And there is a problem, obviously, in terms of mental health within the industry.
There is,
or
but I think, again, you know more about other sports, but I'm sure it must be everywhere.
Yeah.
I think for racing, there's a lot of disappointment, because there's the wannabe jockeys. I really want to be a jockey. I'm light enough, I'm small enough, I've been told I'm good enough. When they actually get to the track, are they natural enough? Do they have that wow factor? Are they instinctive? All that side. Maybe they're not going to be jockeys. So what are you going to be? I'm going to be a work rider. I'm going to be a travelling head lad. You know, it's a disappointment for them, their parents. And I think that is the hardest thing. And I think it's those jockeys who might not have had their expectations managed correctly. And I think the training of staff, I think that is one of the most important things, is that you keep all doors open for as long as possible. And when they're ready to really go down the professional path, you can then encourage. But by that time, they're also qualified they've also got an HGV licence, or they've also sort of got a business course, or can touch type. Drugs is a massive problem. I might be very naive, but I'd like to say at Kingsclere, it's not a problem. We have a very good management team, and I'd like to think that they're very quick at spotting it. And you know, if you have one bad egg.
I'm assuming one of the reasons why drugs may be a problem is because they could also be used to try and keep weight off.
Absolutely.
And therefore that's maybe why they're more of an issue
in racing.
And you've had some kind of crossover with other sports.
Yeah.
And I know the last time I was down here, you had some people from Newcastle United coming down.
I think it's so great that people in sport do talk to each other and actually do learn off each other. And I think I told you last time, Steve Orthwick came down,
I was
which was absolutely fascinating. And he was fascinated by the sort of, I suppose, the simpleness of it, and Andrew's intuition, and how little digital, or
how little data
he is.
Because he was feeling, wasn't he, that he
could potentially be reliant on digital on his data,
and what
exactly,
rather than just actually
looking at
thinking,
watching them.
Yeah.
A bit of a bonus for us today, because we didn't know Hollie Doyle was going to be here today, and so we've managed to grab a few minutes with arguably the best female jockey in the world, the most winners for a British female jockey. This year you went past 1,000 British winners?
Yeah, this year I surpassed 1,000, so that
amazing.
was a good target to have reached.
And just riding out with a bunch of 49 other jockeys this morning, because that's the job.
Yeah, that's the reality of it, I suppose. People don't really see behind the scenes in racing as much as we'd like to, but an everyday occasion for jockeys, really.
So when you come here and ride out in the morning, what do you get out of it?
I like to get to know the horses that I'm going to ride in the evenings, really. It's always nice, and I like being around the lads in the yard and getting to know everyone, and it's a nice atmosphere in this yard in particular. So I do quite enjoy it. Some other jockeys probably don't, but I enjoy getting up and out and get to know the horses.
Do you find that they're all picking your brains on the way round?
Yeah, sometimes, which is nice, and it's always nice to help out.
How did you start out?
The day I left high school, I left home and was gone, and started my life as trying to be a jockey.
So where did you go?
I'm from Herefordshire, and I moved to Abergavenny in Wales and worked for David Evans. I was 16. I actually had my first ride as an amateur, and I was still in high school, so that was a bit crazy. So it's been pretty full on since day one, really.
A decade of growth, development and winning. Does it become addictive, winning?
Yeah, I mean, that's what drives me, is winning, really. If I wasn't riding winners or anything like that, I would find it very hard, but that's what drives me to not let that happen.
When you talk about liking to get to know the horse and obviously being on a horse and understanding its characteristics, are you good at remembering and recalling all of that? How much do you rely on Andrew in the morning, say, to give you a reminder?
I'm pretty good at, when I've sat on a horse, I can really remember every horse I've sat on over the last nearly 10 years.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Which is probably quite strange. But on race day, Andrew's great. He'll just give you a brief reminder of what he expects and how he expects you to ride it, and the rest is left down to you really. He's trained it and got it to where it needs to be, and it's up to me to do the steering.
Well, he would say that's because you've got Stardust. He talks about the fact there are certain jockeys that can just turn up and add something to the horse. The best jockeys can do that.
So when you go to Nottingham this afternoon and you've got three rides at Nottingham, on your way up to Nottingham, are you studying the horses you're going to ride? Are you already across it all? How far in advance are you working?
Obviously we race 7 days a week, but from decks I'll know what I'm riding, and I would have ridden them before maybe, or I'm riding a newcomer today. She's never ran, but I've ridden her at home, so I know her characteristics. I do my form in the mornings, race and post on my iPad, just go through the pace of the races and things like that.
Are you at the stage of your career where you're being driven to those races?
Tom and I have got a driver called Joe, but today Joe's with Tom up at Ripon, so I'm going to drive to Nottingham.
Is there a bit of a battle at home, a bit of an arm wrestle? Who gets the driver?
Yeah, Tom's first preference, because he has to sweat every day and I don't. So.
What he's saying he's doing the harder yards.
Yeah, he has to lose a lot of weight every day, whereas
Right.
I don't have to sweat to do the weight. So I'm pretty lucky. So whenever Joe's available and it's a longer trip, he goes with Tom.
Right, so every day he has to go through that, does he?
Yeah, he has to cut weight every day.
And will he be doing that in a sauna or in a bath?
We're really lucky at home. We've got a sauna and a hot tub, so unfortunately we don't have saunas on the race courses anymore, so we've put one in at home.
Tell us about your physical training off the horse.
Yeah, I train most days. I try and mix it up. I train on the watt bike 3 or 4 times a week and have 3 strength training sessions a week as well. So I try and mix it up a bit, but at this time of year I wouldn't be lifting as heavy weights as I would in the winter, just because we're at the peak of the season really, and I don't want DOMs.
do you think the physicality required for a jockey is underestimated by those of us that say watch horse racing but just don't understand what goes in it for you guys? We know you always have to make a weight, but the sheer physicality beside that. Gabby was talking about what young jockeys have to go through to get. Well,
even the jockey test is tough, isn't it?
To go through the jockey test.
Yeah, it is tough, and obviously starting out in my career, that was something that if you guys had to go on a simulator and got told to push that for 3 or 4 minutes, you'd be legless when you got off.
No, he's doing it in about an hour.
Well, this is still it's still up for debate, Gabby. This, I mean, there are 2 of us on this podcast, and one of us is more horsey than the other. But
yeah, I think you don't.
You don't mean legless in a good way either, do you?
No. Yeah, I think you don't really realise how fit jockeys are. We're riding out all morning, and then some of us are going for 6 or 7 rides in the evening. Yeah. I'm at a point where luckily I find the riding of a horse very easy, because I've been doing it so long. But
are there certain races though that you come out of it exhausted more than others? Physically exhausted?
Not anymore. No. I mean, when I was younger, if I'd ridden a keen one over 2 miles, I'd come back puffing. Yeah. But that was just a sign for me to work harder and get better, really, because you shouldn't be. You want to be a top jockey. But like I said, I find the riding the easy side of things these days, and thankfully.
What about the nerves?
I don't really get nervous at all. I just have high expectations of myself, I suppose, so I don't want to let anyone down. But
adrenaline?
Probably adrenaline. Yeah, adrenaline. I'm quite tunnel visioned. I kind of know how I want to ride a horse and what's going to happen around me.
Does it depend on the race?
Obviously, yeah. Anything can happen, can't it? And you have to. If plan A doesn't work, sometimes you'll resort into plan Z sometimes. So yeah, anything can happen.
And what about when you have time? I mean, these guys don't seem to have any time off here at Kingsclere in terms of, the days of the week. Obviously, Sunday's their rest day, and then sometime in January there might be a holiday. What about your downtime and how you switch off? Because with that tunnel vision, that dedication and that focus, you can't do that 365 days a year, can you?
Yeah, I do struggle to switch off, and we don't have any downtime really. I think I had a week off this year over New Year. We went away for a hot holiday, and that was it really. But we've been going away to Japan and places like that in the winter to ride, and you don't race 7 days a week, you race twice a week. So I suppose you have a few days to recover, and it's a bit of a different lifestyle in that regard. But when you're in England, it is 7 days a week.
What's riding in Japan like, just before we let you go?
Yeah, very good. It's intense. They have 12 races over 2 days, and they have something called jockey jail. So you get put into quarantine on a Friday night and not let out until a Sunday night.
Why?
For betting purposes, you're not allowed any phones, nothing.
It's like being on Traitors or something.
Yeah. It's a different world, yeah.
Wow.
So you're literally shut off from anybody and everybody for that 72 hours?
Yeah. Well, all the jockeys are in like a...
Is that why you married a jockey?
Hostel. Well, yeah, that was a good idea at the time, but we were at different tracks in Japan, so I didn't even see him then.
Have you raced in other countries?
Yeah, I've been Hong Kong, ridden the Melbourne Cup a few times. And
Can't imagine Australia put their jockeys in
No,
jail.
the opposite.
The absolute opposite.
Best of luck in Nottingham.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
for
much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
So today there are going to be 3 different lots of riding out, and this is the first. Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, so we call them lots.
Okay.
And they're actually going to be 5 lots. So we have 3 lots for the older horses and 2 lots for the younger horses. But yeah, this is our first lot.
And this area we're in now, there's an all-weather track here.
Yeah, so because of British weather, which is unpredictable, we actually train the horses on all-weather gallops so that Andrew knows that he's galloping horses on a really safe, consistent track at all times.
And so Andrew stood next to me with a pair of binoculars, keenly observing every single pair that come up. What did you see there, Andrew?
Those were 2 young horses who ran just sitting upsides for the first time, actually, and likewise these 2. So really they're just getting to grips with the idea of having other horses around them and in a sort of simulating a race situation. And some of these are Royal Ascot horses as well, working this morning.
How many do you want to take to Ascot, ideally?
Probably going to have about 25 going through the week.
Who's the person where you've gone wow when you've met them?
It would have to be the late Queen. I mean, she was the most amazing person, and it was just such an honour meeting her. And she's had horses at Kingsclere for quite a long time, and she used to literally come down for tea, and her horse knowledge was phenomenal. And you'd sort of pull out 10 horses, let's say she had 6, and you'd throw in 4 that had done well. She'd say, I don't own that, or she'd say, that's not one of mine, because she was so knowledgeable, and she liked her horses to be immaculately turned out, tails mustn't be too short, all these little things, and she was incredible.
Obviously you get notice she was coming.
Yeah. Not necessarily quite enough notice, but you get enough
to paint the house.
Yeah.
But do a bit of baking.
Yeah. What did you bake for her?
Oh, honestly, my husband let me down so badly one time. I love ottolenghi, and I'm sure you've had some of my granola, which I'm quite proud of.
It's world class.
Yeah. I made the Queen some granola, and Andrew passed the plate and said to her, Mum, would you like some birdseed? I threw him a look.
Because she had horses with Andrew's father Ian as well.
Yeah, and her mother did as well. Right. The Queen mother did as well. And but we are incredibly lucky. We train for the most incredible people and a huge variety of people. And
you've got footballers involved?
Yeah, we've got a couple of footballers, and sometimes you have to pinch yourself.
Yeah.
And I think, last week, I just think it's amazing that people come to our little place and are impressed by it and feel like it's a...
Who are you going to say was here last week? You were going to tell us someone then. Come on.
Hugh Bonneville.
Really?
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story.
So does he have a horse?
He does, yeah.
Right.
But when I met Hugh and Dan Stevens, who was also in Downton Abbey, he needed somewhere to live. And Claire, Andrew's sister's got a house down here, and she doesn't use it very often, so she said, Dan could stay there. And Dan said, I'd love to come and see the horses training. Well, imagine my street cred, walking on the gallops with Dan Stevens. I just couldn't believe it. Anyway, it was all going really well until we get onto the gallops, and the horses are galloping like we've just seen, and he goes, oh my God, you've got jockeys on them. I was like, yes. And he goes, oh, I presumed you train them and you just take them to the bottom of the gallop and let them gallop up free. I was like, oh my God, until that moment I thought you were amazing.
I thought we were the masters of the stupid question.
I was going to say, we may not be Dan Stevens, but we do know that each horse has a jockey on.
Charlton were playing Swindon in some final. And all the lads, he brought them all here in the morning. All the football, the football bus arrived. It's the swankiest thing I've ever seen. And they get off, and they were great, the lads. They were absolutely brilliant.
Most of them really interested.
Absolutely fascinated. But the best question was, we got a farrier to do a demonstration of putting on the horse's shoes, and he said, one of them turns and said, "Can I just ask a question? So the farrier puts them on in the morning, who takes them off at night?" And he said it with a totally straight face. This is the most important bit. These are horse passports. So every horse has a passport, and every horse has a passport, and they are not allowed to go anywhere without it.
Right.
It is a legal requirement.
What you don't want is somebody going to the pub after a day of racing and leaving the passport in the toilet.
Or their staff pass, because it's all about sort of the right people in the right place. So this is just like a human passport, but it hasn't got a photograph of the horse. Instead, it has a little drawing. This one's got a little bit of white on it, Art Patron. So you can see so on her diagram, you see she's got white, white, white. So and then they have her microchip number here. Can you see? Mm-hmm. And they all have a little chip in their necks. And when they arrive at the racecourse, they get scanned, and that has to match the passport.
So we've seen the horses' leisure facilities in the pool, and we've come into the human gym now.
I know, but watching a horse go for a swim is a first for me. I've never seen that. Have you seen that before?
No. When I was here before, they weren't swimming that day. Or I wasn't shown it. And that was quite mesmerising.
It was all part of a horse, the old Harrovian, that horse was called, and it was all part of his rehab coming back from a soft tissue injury, and he did 6 laps of a
as a human would do. A human
pool.
Athlete might do some pool training coming back. But this facility in here is for the jockeys to get stronger, and Leanne White is a young jockey trainer.
The organisation and the planning and everything behind the scenes that goes into putting one horse into one race somewhere in this country or abroad is mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is. And of course that horse has got to stay sound, which is why we do all the training with the young staff, because the better riders they are, the better they, it's something that's really important, and they'll go and do 9, 12 or 18 weeks at either the British Racing School or the National Horse Racing College, some having never sat on a horse before. So in that time, they're expected to learn to be able to get half a ton thoroughbred up the gallops safely. So it's a massive ask for these, young people. So the Racing Staff Development Programme came up with the idea of having rider coaches, which is what I am. I don't concentrate on the jockeys. I'll have them when they first come in until they get their licences, and then a jockey coach will take over. Right. But probably 90% of the people I coach won't be jockeys, they're work riders. And we're very lucky here, and Andrew's brilliant at allowing everybody to ride work. It's not just the jockeys or the senior riders. So they actually learn very quickly. And one of the tools you use is behind you there. This is the Equicizer. Mark is so keen. So keen to get on, aren't you? You've been talking about this for days now.
I just feel like
how
I'm
excited.
being set up here, to be honest with you.
But this looks quite simple and rudimentary, but this is a real vital tool.
It is a vital tool. It really is. And when they first come in, we'll work really basic. We'll work on balance, getting their weight in the right place. And as the months go on, we progress through to them pushing. I've got one young rider that can now, what was very weak when she first started, she can now push with 8 kilograms in her hands, which is hard, it's really hard to do. But it's absolutely vital.
Like if you are 6'2" and they're desperate for me to have a go. But could I?
Yeah, of course you can.
Of course you can. Thought you never asked.
No, I don't want to.
So Chappers is getting onto Marmaduke. It is Marmaduke, not Sharky.
You just keep talking to me, Leanne, because it means I can't hear the sarcastic comments coming from to my left.
You're just going to hold your hands like that and rest your hands on the neck.
Right.
That's it.
So Mark's adopting some kind of jockey position.
That's it. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Very good. Oh, you're quite natural. So we're just going to
Stop.
back a little bit.
Yeah.
That's it. Perfect. Have a look in the mirror. So that's
Wow,
That's it. So a bit smaller cushions, but a bit faster.
So is the aim
Looking
to...
up, look ahead of you.
No, that means
Very
I can see
good.
myself again. I don't want to see myself.
And now you're coming into the final straight, come, lower position, come on, no, lower. That's it.
Very good.
It's the Oaks, it's Epsom, and it's Chappers on Marmaduke.
My hip is starting to really...
And unfortunately, Marmaduke has pulled up with just...
because I thought my hip was going to pop out.
Oh, well, that was a good start.
And then someone did that with weights.
Yeah, so I would say that you did very well, but we just need to shift your weight a bit further back.
Just need to shift weight, to be honest. So I need to go further back?
Yeah. So we're
Right.
looking like just spread your hands. How does it feel?
It feels incredibly unnatural.
It's funny because it looks so natural.
Rob, thank you very much for joining us. Such is the life of a jockey. You've already ridden out twice, and now what do you do?
Yeah, well, no, thank you for having me on. Yeah, so this is kind of a routine Wednesday for jockeys. It tends to be our usual work mornings are Wednesdays and Saturdays. Yeah. So these are crucial foundations that you put in a yard to get to know the horses in the mornings, particularly younger horses, 2-year-olds that have limited experience. Always good to get a sit on them, work them out. And then, it's off hop footing then to Nottingham this afternoon. So, it's always pretty...
Drive yourself?
Driving myself, 2.5 hours.
Riding a horse from Kingsclere?
No, riding a horse with Brian Meehan, who is another trainer that I have associations with, and my agent has found me the ride for this horse today.
But you started your life as a jockey here, didn't you? You came here as a 16-year-old?
This is where it all began, a long time, 14 years ago now. It's my 30th birthday last week, and what a place to start your apprenticeship, start your career, not only as a jockey but in racing. Very fortunate. I'm sure you can appreciate today, it's quite a unique place, and a place that's developed massively over the last kind of 10 years, with numbers of horses increasing and quality of horses with some fantastic owners. As you can appreciate, with all the colours around this room, it's a truly special place.
Do you feel then that by being here from 16, you've actually been able to develop a career path for you? We often talk about how a horse progresses through its career, but do you feel like you've had step-by-step progress?
Massively. When I first came here, even from when Ian Balding was training, it had a great reputation for bringing on young apprentices, giving apprentices an opportunity to get out there and be able to develop their career. So it was always a yard that I had my eye on, and a yard that I wanted to try and get into, and I was fortunate enough to do that. And also, leaving home at 16, coming down here, it really was kind of a home from home. We all lived in the hostel. We had a great era of young jockeys. Oisin Murphy was here, Kieran Schumark, Daniel Muscat, and we've all been able to come through and achieve, a really high level of success. Obviously, the likes of Oisin speak for themselves, but I think we've all, between the four of us, ridden Group 1 winners. So it's quite special, that, and quite unique. But going back to leaving home to coming here, we all lived in the hostel. We had a fantastic caterer who looked after us. And
not Annalisa, somebody else.
Not
We've
Annalisa.
had her sausage rolls.
No,
so.
Charlotte, she looked after us very well, but her main job was keeping us all in check and making sure we were on our best behaviour. But you can imagine a a hostel full of 16-year-old lads. It was a lot of fun.
Well, a lot is talked about horse welfare within the sport and outside the sport. What I'm really interested in being here with so many humans around to look after is jockey welfare as well. And there have been some terrible stories of late about mental health and obviously suicides within the sport. And it's clear that the pastoral side of things here is really, really important. The welfare of the jockeys, whether it's the gym and having sports available for you guys to, I know you're not living on site anymore. Do you see this place as being kind of the standard bearer in how, young riders, young jockeys, would-be jockeys should be looked after?
Yeah, I think it's very important to recognise that. I think Kingsclere and Parkhouse took it to the next level of, managing young people, young staff, and through every level of, whether they were just coming in to be a stable lad or lass, to being a jockey, to people wanting careers in being a travelling head lad. It was always something that you always felt very comfortable here. You always felt like you're in a very good, healthy environment. And they've just stepped it up each year. They do gym classes for young riders that want to improve themselves. They're doing Equicizer sessions, vet talks. They have an on-site gym, and everything's all kind of in-house, which is really lucky. It's really unique, but it's something that I do think, particularly Annalisa has pushed massively to improve, and it is, by far probably one of the best places for that. Absolutely.
How hard is the life of a professional jockey?
Well, it's a difficult one really, because I love riding horses all my life, so to be able to turn my hobby into my job, you think you're very fortunate to be able to do. But any jockey out there, it's all about, I think, getting your head around, okay, even if you're doing very well as a jockey and you're riding at 20% strike rate, 80% of the time you're in a losing sport, almost. So as long as you can get your head around that and not beat yourself up too much about it, manage your weight accordingly, don't be riding below what your body can allow you to do comfortably, and surround yourself with good people. Very lucky to have great family support, but also there's always a phone. You can always make that phone call to friends.
Just give us a little insight though into how often, for example, you would monitor your own weight. What kind of things you don't allow yourself to eat? Are you quite disciplined, or do you find it quite easy to maintain the right weight?
I am very lucky. So this time of year now, when we're very busy, like last month in May, I had 80 rides. So you're well over 2 or 3 rides a day. So you're busy. And your weight, well, my weight kind of sits at a level of probably 8 stone 10. And then if you were to get down to that lower weight, you'd probably go and lose 2 to 3 pounds, which your body will allow you to release as long as you give it back. And then it's all about, yes, you're allowed a day off and you're allowed to fluctuate a little bit and treat yourself, but it's about keeping busy, I think, helps. I know a lot of the lads aren't as fortunate as me, and they would have to take off weight every single day. But again, it's routine. It's if your body gets used to it, it gives you back as long as you look after it in the right way. So I must say, there's a lot of my colleagues that are heavier than me, and I do find it a lot easier. But I've always been naturally quite light, so it's always a help.
You're looking at me.
You gave me a very knowing look then, not the other
way. Well, look, we've taken up a lot of your time already, and you've got to go off and actually earn a living this afternoon and race. But I can tell, we were just chatting before about all the amazing things that go on here, and obviously our colleague Claire Balding, her wife Alice, who was a Radio 4 broadcaster, has been down and done media training with you guys, and it's definitely done the trick, because it was great chatting to you, and you're obviously all great talkers as well. But you understand that's part of the gig, isn't it? When you're on a horse and you win a race, you're going to have a microphone thrust in front of you.
Absolutely, that's the it's all very well being a good rider, but there's a bigger package to just being a jockey, and it's about communication to owners and trainers, and then to the wider audience that are watching you on television. So it's always an opportunity to try and sell yourself as best you can, and I hope I try and do that to the best I can.
Well, you have. Go well this afternoon at Nottingham. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank
Brilliant.
you.
Thanks
Cheers.
for having me
so much,
on.
Rob. Thank you.
Well, Andrew, I think the first thing we should say is thank you very much for everything that we have experienced this morning. The amount of detail and information you have to process is astonishing. Is it all up there? Has it all been written down? What do you do with it all?
Well, it's a funny thing about horse racing. It's such a simple sport, isn't it? One horse runs faster than another, but we've got a brilliant way of complicating everything. And not just the training, but also the handicap system and the horses that require genetically different distances, maybe different ground preferences. So there are all sorts of intricacies that you wouldn't necessarily be aware of happening behind the scenes, and we're trying to establish the picture for each horse so that we can try and campaign them to the best of their ability. That's essentially what we're trying to do.
But so much of that is coming from you, and obviously you've got people around you who are also observing, but it's not coming from readouts and analytics and computers. It's a lot of it is you innately through years and years and years and years of doing this, understanding.
Yeah, I think so. There is. We do have access to a lot of data as well, which we'll get at the end of the morning. So, but for the time being, seeing it with your naked eye, and you're right, probably I've seen enough, having done it for as long as I have, that you're visually comparing, light with light, what might have your Derby horse galloping 6 or 7 years ago in the programme books. Even we've got going back the workbooks from my dad's day, comparing of how they prepared their horses. It's very different now, but keeping a record of that, but visually for the morning exercise today is just seeing it. And having a natural instinct of how to read that. But then I'll probably look at the data this evening and think, oh, that was stronger than it looked.
When I first came here, Annalisa said she's in charge of things with 2 legs and you're in charge of things with 4 legs. And she also talked about other sports coming in, and you're associated with Leicester Football Club, but she mentioned Newcastle United and Steve Borthwick coming down and reaching out and saying, can I come and watch you work? Because he was slightly concerned that he was relying almost too much on data, perhaps, and wanted to see you in your natural environment. What did he explain and learn from you?
Steve was, I think it's fascinating that he was sort of interested not just in how we were doing it, but obviously I think he went to other, sporting places from all different sports to see how the training happened and how much was instinct and how much was science. And I think that the fact of the matter is it's a combination. You can't ignore the science now. We've got access to it. And particularly on race data. So if you watch a race with your naked eye, there are so many analytics now that you can have access to, timing, stride frequency, stride length, that might have an impact on how you're going to campaign that horse going forward. So it's just getting the combination right, the balance between.
But it's interesting because he would obviously be dealing with data, but then there are people, right? So every sports person has a different personality and different motivations. You're dealing with 2 different personalities because you want your jockeys to do a job and you expect them to deliver. The horses also have. I'm not saying horses have feelings, but they
well, they do.
but they wake up.
They definitely have moods.
Yeah, they wake up that morning and they might not be up for it.
100%. And obviously we can't talk to horses and they can't tell you that they're feeling a little bit below par, or so we've got to try and preempt, and particularly from an injury point of view, that's a lot of one of our main jobs is trying to avoid exposing the horses to injury, and that's a 24/7 job because horses turned out in the paddock can injure themselves. I mean, it's frightening. If you just sort of let them all loose in a paddock, we'd have more problems than how we do it in a controlled way here. So the jockey side of things is obviously, as Annalisa probably said, we've got and had young apprentices, young jockeys who you can mould to a certain extent and try and instill values and et cetera, but once they're out in the big wide world, they're really their own employer. And they've got to make decisions for themselves. So it becomes a little bit more difficult to control them after that. But it's a fascinating industry because there are so many, as you probably saw today, so many people from diverse backgrounds, all coming together with a common goal, and that's I'd like to think to work as a team to achieve the best results we can on the racecourse.
Something Rob said to us when we were interviewing. Rob stuck with me about being interviewed after a race, which you sort of don't grow up thinking about, but then once that happens after you've won a race, that's your opportunity as a jockey to put yourself in the shop window for an owner or the shop window for a trainer. How much of your job is trying to spot jockey talents around the country for the future for you as you build a staple of jockeys?
Yeah, I think that was possibly 10 years ago. That was a part of our business or a part of what we were trying to create. I think less so now. I think, really we've got 24/7 hands full of training racehorses, and that is our, the number one priority. It's a very nice byproduct if you get a young jockey come through who makes a success. I mean, that's, very rewarding for everybody if they've started here, and we've been super lucky. William Buick, you would have heard of, Oisin Murphy, David Probert, Rob Hornby, and Jason Watson, and many others have come through, having started here as school leavers, to become very successful, have very successful careers as jockeys. And it is rewarding, but at the end of the day, I think now the priority is we're just trying to win as many races as we can. And if they're riding them, it gives you more satisfaction. But the idea is you've got to try and pick the best man for the job. So if you're at a big race meeting and Ryan Moore sat in the weighing room, he's the best jockey in the world, with the best will in the world, you want to stay loyal to your homegrown jockeys, but at the same time, the owners are paying, and sometimes a lot of money to have results, and you don't want the best jockey in the world sat in the weighing room when he could be riding your horse.
We asked Hollie Doyle if she gets nervous, and she said no. There was, she's tunnel visioned and she knows what she wants to achieve. Do you get that, or is it a sense of excitement, adrenaline when you're doing
dread.
Is it fear? So many sports people, it's fear.
Yeah, I'm not a very good watcher. I really don't. The funny thing is, I'd much rather be at home than going racing, because I get the whole morning done here and then the afternoon work as well. But watching races in my kitchen is far less stressful than being at the racecourse, watching them in real life. So apart from Ascot and the big meetings, I tend to be, watching them here.
Do the owners want you out there though?
It depends. Some of them would. No, I think by and large, I'm not going to my presence isn't going to make the horses run any faster at the racecourse. But I think the bigger meetings, you want to. That's the reason you do it, is to share, if you are lucky enough to get success at the big meetings, share that with the people who own the horses. Because, I'm sure Annalisa mentioned it, when we've got such a variety of owners from all different walks of life, but with a common goal and a shared ambition that you share with them, is to try and get some success on the racecourse.
What ambitions do you have?
Plenty left. I mean, you could be the best trainer in the world and you still wouldn't have won every race you'd want to win. So obviously flat racing, different to the jumping, it's very much a sort of a global game. And we've been lucky enough, we've had big winners in Australia and America and Canada, Hong Kong, Dubai, obviously. So we go around the world, and each of these jurisdictions have races you'd really like to win, not just from the money point of view, but just for a CV point of view. It's never ending.
On the money point of view, obviously it's a business that involves a lot of overheads, but it's an expensive business to get into if you want to own a horse and then get it trained. How does it work differently with every owner in terms of, if we see a big money race, you're not going to get all of that cash, right? So I know this is a bit crass, Andrew, but I think, a lot of people don't understand where the money flows and how it goes.
From the business point of view, the training racehorses, you're running a hotel for a start, so people are paying for the beds every night, and that should cover all your costs, the staffing costs, etc., etc. The margin should be a small profit on that. So the bonus would be 10% of prize money. So if the trainer is, and this is across the board pretty much in every country, win and place any prize money won, the trainer would receive 10%, and the jockey roughly the same, and the stable staff 5% as well, which would get split equally between them. And the other thing from flat racing, where we would have financially, if you were lucky enough to get a horse who made big money at the sales, there would be a sales commission as well. And that makes a big difference at the end of the year. You know, if we've had a good year and we sell horses well, that's, you know, a very important income, which gives us then the money to improve the facilities. But it's never ending. You know, the investment, the reinvestment is never ending in a place like this. I mean, if you're successful financially, it can be very rewarding, but there's also this sort of big black hole where the money goes down to try and keep the facilities, you know, comparable with the best stables in Europe.
Do you find that owners are in the main understanding?
Yeah, very, very much so. I mean, I think a lot of particularly the bigger owners who've had, you know, owned horses for years, they know the peaks and troughs of racing horses, and you know, that's the beauty of it, and that's why people keep coming back. Is there's no guarantee. You know, you might spend X million at the sales, but it doesn't guarantee you success because there's so many other factors at play. Yeah.
And is the training community collaborative, competitive, friendly? I mean, do you
all of the above?
All of it, yeah.
On different days of the week.
But I don't know if you're on a slot, and are you going to invite Ruben Amrim to watch a training session? Probably not. Do you know what each other are doing?
No, probably not. But we would have, you know, my close friends would be probably Richard Hannon and Rafe Beckett, who live fairly locally, but are very successful trainers, same sort of age as I am. And we would have lunch, you know, once a month and probably compare notes, but not in great detail. You know, essentially, you know, we're there to compete, but at the same time, it is a friendly rivalry.
I know that you have got loads more to do today, and we've really appreciated your time. Just briefly, you don't have a lot of downtime, but you do like other sports, and maybe that's where you get your respite.
You're going to bring up my football club?
No, I'm not going to bring up Southampton, who obviously have been relegated from the Premier League. So I was wondering if you're getting another hobby. No, are you?
No, we're a sport-obsessed family. Obviously, you know, my sister is into every sport going, but we would go as diverse as. So I think last year it would be rugby internationals, or now going to watch Gloucester. So we got season tickets at Southampton. Try and go to the darts every year at Ali Pali. The American football at either Wembley or Tottenham.
Do you go in fancy dress to the darts?
No, I haven't been. I usually have
it's
to go on the
coattails.
But you know, we love, as a family, we love sport. My dad was a great all-round sportsman himself, and then decided to focus on racing, which is where our focus is. But our downtime would be sporting.
Sport.
Yeah, basically.
Well, it's been something of a kind of utopic experience,
it really
hasn't
has,
it,
yeah,
today?
It really has.
Thank you so much for letting us in, and
it's a pleasure.
A peek behind the curtain. So, did I oversell it?
No, you didn't oversell it at all. When you came back from here first time round and said we should come and do an episode here, you were so full of praise for every aspect of this operation. And no, you haven't. It is eye-opening.
It is, isn't
absolutely
it? What has
eye-opening.
surprised you the most? Because you've seen a lot.
Do you know what? I tell you what surprised me the most, which is what you said to me when we were coming back from the horse having a swim, is how clean it is. And the reason I say that is because it shows how organised they have to be, how everything has to be so controlled and on top of, and everybody know what they're doing, where they're meant to be every minute of the time that they are here. There is nothing disorganised. It's meticulous. So even sitting in this room now, the way the chairs, I know I did this at Sale and made a big thing of the way the chairs are stacked, but the way the chairs are stacked, there's no horse poo anywhere.
That's one of the. I mean, it doesn't even smell of manure and horses.
No, it doesn't.
Hollie Doyle said, "Excuse me for smelling of horses." I said, "But this is the weird thing. You don't."
Yeah. when you know, I was riding Marmaduke to Derby success. You know, there was a guy in the background washing down one of the horse boxes, ready to take the horses, but again meticulously cleaning that box on the outside before it set off. Everything is planned to within an inch of its life, because it has to be.
And yet there is so much personality around the place. There's an old man here, and I can say that he's 83 years old, who mucks out 2 stables a day because he just still wants to keep coming. He's been coming here pretty much most of his life to work. So it's not that everybody here is 22 years old and, has a resting heart rate of 42. Yeah. There's a whole kind of panoply of human life here. They've got riders who've come from Sudan. They've got a rider who came in from South Africa. 50% of the riders here are women.
There's a care and a love to the place as well. Annalisa knows everybody's name. I mean, we assume she does. I mean, they could have been called something different and we would never know. But she knows everybody's name. She seems to know what they were doing. I go back to the sale episode with Michelle Orange, who knew that someone was doing a dissertation or knew what was going on with somebody at home. And it's that care and love that is aligned with the detail and the planning that leads to a successful operation. I mean, their house is just like an open house
people
policy.
Popping in.
I mean, they live there.
Yeah.
But you can just
owners coming into the
popping
kitchen.
in, and we're popping in, and racing managers are popping in, and Andrew's doing his planning with the racing post at the table, and there's a dog walking round, and I'm nipping to the loo, and it's...
I mean, we're not far away now from Ascot, which is one of the big meets of the year. They'll have 25 horses there, and I'm thinking, can you imagine, like, a few days before the Champions League final, Sir Alex Ferguson in his kitchen looking at his selection kind of dilemma, and people coming in to the kitchen, because that's what it's comparable to, isn't it? And I think there's a few reasons for that. One, they want to show you the best side of the sport. They're very proud of what they do here. They like to think that they are, in some way, kind of the leaders in terms of standards, and they know the sport needs to be sold. And when you and I will go and watch a race, and I'm going to go to the races at the weekend, I will look at it differently, and I'll look at those horses, and I'll look at all the people around those horses differently.
And I'll just be waiting for a phone call, and now they've seen me on the Equicizer.
It won't be long. Cue Black Beauty music.
I am hoping that they have put the Black Beauty music under me saying this bit now. Although that might cost too much money, who knows. sportsagents@global.com if you want to email us or get in touch on our socials.
You can download all episodes of The Sports Agents on Global Player or wherever you get your podcast. For that, don't forget to rate and review, and we'll be back next week.
The Sports Agents
with Gabby Logan and Mark Chapman.